Mitzvah number 72. Now, this sounds like a technical mitzvah. Again, that's the beauty of the mitzvahs, is always where the mitzvah sounds like it has very little to do with us. And then you find out that it's actually a fundamental in life. So the mitzvah here, the technical mitzvah is, that a Jew, there are a lot of things that have to be tithed. When a Jew a Jew harvests his crop, so you have to separate a certain amount and give it to the Kohen, and then a certain amount to the Levi, and then a certain amount you leave for the poor people, and then the Levi kicks up 10% to the Kohen. There's a whole technical process of how the tithing, what's called the tithing process. There's a whole technical idea right there. There's a whole technical idea, of how the tithing process works. Now, the mitzvah itself is to not do anything out of order in the tithing process. That means when you separate Truma and Meiser, do it the way it's meant to be done. Don't go out of order. Now, sometimes if you do it out of order, so you have to go back and you have to reverse it. But in general, you're not supposed to go out of order. And the commentaries explain what the Torah, obviously, if the Torah says don't do it out of order, what do you think? Why would this Torah say don't do it out of the prescribed order? What do you think is the basic idea given for why not to do that? Okay, that's always true. They always do it the way you're told to do it. That's certainly true. There's some sort of military discipline, do it the way you're told to. But that's true. That's true. There's a lot of merit to that. But what's the most basic idea? If I tell you to do something, you do it in a certain order. Why would you think so? Why would you think anything in life I tell you to do it in a...
You recognize, you're giving to the Kohen, you're giving to the Levi, you're doing...
A priority system.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's certainly true. What'd you say? It wouldn't work organized. You're close. Sometimes things in life just don't work. It just doesn't work properly. If you put in, it's just not going to work if you do things out of order. That's true. Hunter said that you want to maintain a priority. The Kohen comes first. It's like with aliyahs. That's certainly true. That's certainly true. But the commentaries say very basic that when you have to do so, if you do it out of order, chances are you're going to forget something. You're going to mess up if you do it out of order. If you put on your shirt before your undershirt, that's not going to work. That just isn't going to work, right? As case in point, or you'll forget something, right? Okay. No, any similarities to real life, purely intentional. But what do you call it? But there are other things in life that I won't forget it. But you're going to end up. There's certain people that I see that you get the impression if they would have gotten up 5 minutes earlier, their whole day would, because they're 5 minutes late to everything during the day. So if they just would have backed up their clock 5 minutes, but we know that doesn't work. If they get up 5 minutes late, they'll still be 5 minutes late for everything during the day. So what the Torah says is that order, doing things in order, prevents mistakes. When you do things in order, that prevents mistakes. That's a fundamental. And the idea here is, do you know that in the yeshiva system, the learning sessions that they have in a real yeshiva, and they have a real yeshiva, do you know what the learning sessions are called? It's called Seder. You go to Seder. There's a learning Seder. You know what the word Seder means? Order. It means order. What does it mean? Pesach, we have a Seder. Why is it called a Seder? The Seder has a prescribed set of steps that you go through in the Pesach Seder. Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas. And it's a prescribed set of steps that you go through in the Pesach Seder. It's called a Seder because you're going in an order. And an order generally means you're trying to accomplish something. So the Torah says, don't do it in a disorganized fashion, because if you do it in a disorganized fashion, that's going to lead to mistakes. That's the basic idea by the tithing process. You'll leave out the Levi because you skipped it. The whole tithing process in a Torah society, the 10% that you have to give away, you give away of your earnings 10%, and if you want, you could give up to 20%, not more than that. You can't give more than 20% because you have to make sure you don't turn yourself into a poor person. On the other hand, if you are what's called fabulously rich, I don't know what that number is but if A, I would like to find out soon. B, if you have to ask, you probably aren't. That's usually the rule. Unless you're fabulous or rich, you're limited to 20%. Now, the 10% that you give, there's actually a three-way dispute nowadays whether it is a custom, whether it is a rabbinic law or a Torah law. Some of the commentaries say that it is actually a Torah law to give away 10% even nowadays. Others say of your earnings. Others say it is 10% of, it's a minhag. Now, going back to your question, when to do it doesn't really matter as long as you do it by a certain deadline. You have a running, many people just have a running record of how much money they are in credit or in debt to the 10%. It is after taxes though. In other words, if you earn $20,000 a year and you pay $5,000 taxes, so you only tithe $15,000. It's $15,000 off your net, not off your gross. That's for sure. But how to calculate the net is not always so simple, and sometimes somebody of medium means is easier for him to fulfill the mitzvah than a man of stronger means, because a man of somebody who's got investments all over and he owns buildings and real estate, it's not always so clear exactly how much he's earned and when he should tithe. It's not so simple. Eli, go.
Does this order also apply to like doing mitzvahs? You have like mitzvahs
There is.
you're doing, and one comes before the other.
There is an order. There's an order to how to do mitzvahs. What if 2 mitzvahs come your way? And what about if you have a simple mitzvah versus later on there will be a more difficult mitzvah? There are all sorts of orders in life. Let me just go on for it. Yeah, too big.
I did not ask why one of your previous comments suggested to think that this is not a real issue.
That was only tongue-in-cheek. That was tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, that was a line from a Purim spiel. The only reason I said it's not a real yeshiva is because this is a Baal Tshuva. This is a yeshiva that was set up for people who have limited Jewish background. Whereas in your standard, what we call a mainstream yeshiva, most of the learning during the course of the day is independent learning. The boys learn together and they go to shir once a day, and they have like FFBs, right? Fractured from birth. So that was only tongue in cheek. This is very much a yeshiva because the yeshiva doesn't say what level the yeshiva has to be. But in your regular mainstream yeshiva at Or Sameach, we don't have. When you get to the base measures, they'll have a seder, a morning seder, an afternoon seder, an evening seder, which is a learning session. But in all mainstream yeshivas, it's called a seder because the day is built on an order. At 7 o'clock in the morning, you're at minyan. At 8 o'clock, you're at breakfast. At 9 o'clock, you are in the base medrash, and you're supposed to know where you are at all times. A person is supposed to know. He's supposed to have some idea of where he is at all times. So, when as a matter of fact, if you want a deeper idea, do you know that it says that when the Torah was given, the world, there was a perfect stillness in the world. There was no movement in the world, no birds chirped, nothing. There was not a sound when the Torah was given other than the Torah being given. That's what the Medrash says. Because when something is in motion, when something is moving, that means it has not gotten to its destination. That's imperfection. When something is moving around, that shows a lack of perfection. If you're bringing a fork towards your mouth, that means you have not achieved the goal yet. Something in motion is a lack of perfection at a deeper level. And so the entire world was at a perfect stillness, that's what the Medrash says, when the Torah was given. That means if you see and you're in the home at 11 o'clock at night, if there's a child in motion at 11 o'clock at night, that is not perfection. Right? That child is supposed to be horizontal, quiet, and sleeping. So that is out of motion. That's just it. Now, what applies to us, like, there's a classic story. They say a father once went to a yeshiva. He went to a yeshiva to see how his son is doing. He wanted to see how his son is learning in yeshiva. He wanted to check on his son. So the father went to the yeshiva, he went straight to the kid's dormitory room. Went up to his dorm room, came from out of town, visited at the yeshiva, went into the kid's dorm room, took a look in the dorm room. He saw that his bed was well made, the pillow was straight, the shelves, his clothing was folded, turned around, went right back home and said to his wife, he's learning well in yeshiva. I heard that story when I was in about 5th grade. How do you know? Why did he know? Because an organized mind is going to be an organized person. And if a person is disorganized, that means his mind is disorganized. It's the same mind. It's the same character that's coming out one way or another. It's very rare that you're going to have a guy who's making it on time to everything. He's precise everything, and his room is in disarray. It doesn't work that way. If the room is this, I could basically look at a person. I could look at a person and basically make a projection. Not necessarily I'm right. I could basically make a projection of what this guy's room probably looks like. You can make a projection. Because if you're organized, the organization carries over in all areas. By the way, this is sometimes a problem in marriage, because in marriage you often get one of the couples is a little less concerned and one is more concerned. Now usually it's the husband, usually, not always, by far from always. Usually it's the wife who's a little more particular about the order in the home than the husband. Not always, by far from always. As a matter of fact, I knew a couple that the husband was not only neat, he was military neat, and his wife was, if she would have been average, so it would have been just a minor conflict. She was an incorrigible slob, right? And this was a very big issue in their marriage. They had to work it out, because both have to, just because you're military neat doesn't mean everybody else around you has to be, and you could drive people crazy that way. There are women who make their entire families neurotic, because they're women in extreme cases. They follow their kids around the house as soon as he takes off his shoes in the living room to read a magazine. Get your shoes on. She's just a nervous wreck. She's just a nervous wreck about, I wasn't even allowed into the living room when I was a kid. You're not, and sometimes, they just don't want, they worked in the house, they want to keep the house neat. That I understand. But sometimes in an extreme case, she actually cannot rest. She's just waiting to pounce on anything. Did you finish supper? Get those dishes off there. She got to have it. She can't be relaxed. Now, everything has an upside and a downside, because there are other areas in life. The point is, the Torah is telling you that one of the things in life that, there was a Hasidic Rabbi. He was very meticulous about his time. His daily schedule was measured to the minute. One day somebody came to him and told him there's a Jew who's in trouble. So the Rebbe took 20 minutes to say Tehillim for that Jew. He said it took him 2 years to get back on his regular schedule. He was off schedule for 2 years because of those 20 minutes. It knocked off his schedule. His schedule was behind for 20 minutes for 2 years till he could get back to regular schedule. Because that's how meticulous, that's how precise he was in his scheduling. The rule in life is that it takes time to get organized. The rule in life is it takes time to get organized. But the time you take to get organized will eventually save you time. If you're organized, it'll save you time. There's certain people who are always, some people are always, you got an appointment, they're always at the doctor's office 20 minutes early, they take all precautions to be there. And there are other people, they live on the edge, right? If they're going to the airport, some people are always there 3 hours at a time. Some people are always running. They're the ones who are being announced on the thing. Mr. Murphy, we're a final call for Mr. Murphy, and he comes staggering in from a bar, wherever he is. Now, once in a while, these people, they live on the edge. And it usually works out. Once in a while, you miss the plane. And when that happens, it just gives you so much aggravation that all the other times that you save time, you just went out the window now, because the aggravation you have when you blew it is a lack of organization. That's what the Torah is telling you. The Torah is telling you that organization is the key. If you want to be, Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grzinski, who was one of the great Torah leaders of the previous generation, was a world-renowned genius. The Chafetz Chaim was the acknowledged leader of Torah Jewry. After the Chafetz Chaim was passed away, so the acknowledged leader of Torah Jewry was Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grzinski, who was a massive genius who could do 3 things at once. He could talk and write and had phone conversations all at the same time. Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grzinski from Vilna. He became the leader. Yeah, he became the leader after the Chafetz Chaim. So Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grzinski said, you don't have to succeed in life. You don't have to be brilliant. To succeed in life, you have to be organized. Right, and it just, sometimes you walk into a person's room and you just see a guy's working at a desk. He's swimming in a sea of paper. Just everything is all disorganized, and a person, it leads eventually, it catches up to you. Eventually, it leads to frustration.